When we talk about great quarterbacks, we recycle the same names. Brady,
deep shot. To the end zone for Miller.
Manning,
escapes the rush. Throws complete to Gonzalez. He's in the end zone for a touchdown.
Mahomes.
Oh, what a run. Now dances for He's still in bounds. Patrick Mahomes. How did he do that?
But just outside that spotlight, there's another group. Quarterbacks who carried entire franchises. Quarterbacks who put up real numbers, won huge games, and then quietly slipped out of the conversation. So it doesn't feel right to leave these guys out of the conversation. This is our countdown of 15 forgotten quarterbacks who were way better than you remember. Number 15, Jim Everett. You probably remember the TV meltdown.
But if you call me Chris Everett to my face one more time,
I already did it twice.
You better, if you call it one more time, we better take a station break.
But you probably don't remember the passing stats. Before the Chris Everett moment with Jim Rowe, Jim Everett was putting up real numbers for the Los Angeles Rams. In the late 80s and early 90s, he's slinging it in an era that's nowhere near as pass-happy as today. Multiple seasons near the top of the league in touchdowns. Deep playoff runs. Eric Dickerson, Henry Ellard, Flipper Anderson. He was running a legit top-tier passing offense, but over time, the Rams faded. The team around him got worse, and instead of being remembered as one of those early volume passers, his whole career got boiled down to one uncomfortable TV moment. Jim Everett wasn't an all-time great, but for a stretch, he was absolutely a top 10 quarterback in the league. More than a punchline. Way better than you remember. Number 14, Aaron Brooks. Before Drew Brees rewrote the Saints record book, Aaron Brooks was the one breaking their playoff curse. Brooks stepped in and gave New Orleans something they had never really had. A dynamic quarterback who could win in January. Big arm, sneaky mobility, and a connection with Joe Horn that produced some seriously fun football. He became the first quarterback to win a playoff game for the Saints. 3,500-yard seasons, 20 to 25 touchdown years, and all of that while playing for a franchise that was still trying to figure out how to be functional. When people talk about the Saints now, it's almost all Breeze and Sean Payton. The Brooks era gets remembered for inconsistency, turnovers, and chaos more than the highs. If you watched him in his prime, though, you remember this. When Aaron Brooks got hot, he was dangerous. He was fun, flawed, and better than people remember. He just happened to come right before the golden era. Number 13, Kerry Collins. From expansion underdog to Super Bowl starter to veteran survivor, Kerry Collins' career is one big roller coaster. He helped an expansion Carolina Panthers team get good way too early, pulling off playoff wins against teams that had been around for decades. Then he goes to the New York Giants, and suddenly he's leading them all the way to Super Bowl 35. Later, he's in Oakland, then in Tennessee. He's starting playoff games for the Titans in his mid-30s. Mixed into all that, there's the human side. Struggles with alcohol, maturity, and pressure. Owning up to it. Rebuilding his career and his image. Collins was never a top 5 quarterback, but when you zoom out, you see a long career with real peaks, huge games, and a ton of resilience. Not a Hall of Famer, but a great, this league's hard, and this guy lasted. Number 12, Brad Johnson. He did everything you're supposed to do as a quarterback, and history gave the credit to everyone else. Brad Johnson was quietly solid in Minnesota and Washington. Accurate, efficient, and better than the game manager label people throw around. Then he lands in Tampa Bay. That 2002 Bucs team is famous for its legendary defense. Sapp, Brooks, Lynch, Barber, they absolutely deserve that love. But somebody still had to run the offense. Somebody had to get him in the right plays, avoid backbreaking mistakes, and make the throws. That was Brad Johnson. He didn't put up Madden stats. He didn't give you wild scrambles or crazy off-platform throws. He just won the Super Bowl. And over time, the narrative became all about the defense and John Gruden. Johnson became the stock photo for game manager. The truth is, he was better than that. He wasn't a superstar, but he was a championship-level grown-up at one of the toughest positions in sports. Number 11, Jeff Hostetler. He started the year as a backup and ended it as a Super Bowl hero. Jeff Hostetler spent years in the shadows behind Phil Simms with the New York Giants. He was the guy holding the clipboard, running the scout team, meaning staying ready. Then, late in the 1990 season, Sims went down. The Giants turned to Hostetler, and he delivers. He manages the offense, made the right throws, ran just enough to move the chains. And in Super Bowl 25, against the Bills' high-powered offense, he plays a tough, efficient game in one of the most dramatic Super Bowls ever. We remember that game for wide right, for the missed field goal. But we forget the quarterback who got the Giants there and who made the plays needed to win on the biggest stage. Hostetler became a solid starter with the Raiders, but he'll always be the blueprint for the next man up quarterback who actually finished the job. Number 10. Chad Pennington. If accuracy was the only metric, Chad Pennington would be in a lot more conversations. With the Jets, he was one of the most accurate, efficient quarterbacks in the league. He didn't have a cannon, but he had touch, timing, and a brain that could carve up defenses. He helped the Jets win big division games, including against Tom Brady's Patriots. He stabilized teams that weren't exactly loaded with elite weapons. Then the shoulder injuries hit. Over and over, his arm strength got chipped away. He kept fighting back, reinventing himself, leaning even more on anticipation and timing. He went to Miami, won again, and somehow ended up as a two-time comeback player of the year. Chad Pennington is one of the best examples of a quarterback whose mind and skill set were absolutely good enough, but whose body just wouldn't hold up. If his shoulder stays intact, the entire story's different. Number 9. Vinny Testaverde. The joke is that he played forever. The truth is, he was actually pretty good. Vinny Testaverde came into the league as the number 1 overall pick with the Buccaneers, and his early years were rough. Tons of interceptions, not a lot of help. Most guys in that situation vanish. Vinny didn't. He reinvented himself with the Browns and the Ravens, then really found his groove with the New York Jets. In 1998, he led the Jets to the AFC Championship game. Big arm, big plays. Suddenly, he's not just still in the league, he's leading a legitimate contender. And then there's the longevity. Starting games into his 40s, getting the emergency call up multiple times, wearing what feels like half the league's uniforms. He's remembered as a meme for how long he stuck around. But for a long stretch, Vinny Testaverde was a solid top half of the league starter, not just a survivor, a real player. Number 8. Jake Plummer. He was chaos in a helmet, and sometimes that chaos looked unstoppable. Jake Plummer's career starts in Arizona, dragging some rough Cardinals teams to surprise wins they probably had no business getting. Jake the Snake was the perfect nickname. He was slippery, fearless, and absolutely unafraid to try the impossible throw. Then he goes to Denver. Under Mike Shanahan, you get a more refined version of Plummer. Still mobile, still dangerous outside the pocket, but more in control. He leads the Broncos to an AFC Championship game, and for a couple of years, you can absolutely win big with him as your guy. Then, tension. The organization turns to Jay Cutler. Plummer, frustrated, basically walks away from the game before his skills completely evaporate. At his worst, he was maddening. At his best, he was a nightmare to defend. Never boring, and absolutely better than the way he's usually remembered. Number 7, Bernie Kosar. Cleveland hadn't had many true franchise quarterbacks, but for a while, they had one in Bernie Kosar. Awkward throwing motion, not the prettiest athlete, but he was a gamer. In the mid to late 80s, the Browns were constantly in the mix for the Super Bowl. Kosar was the steady hand, tough, smart, and unshaken in big moments. Unfortunately, his era is tied forever to heartbreak. The drive, the fumble, those iconic gut punch losses to John Elway's Broncos. Instead of being remembered as the guy who led the Browns to multiple Super Bowls, he became the face of a franchise that almost got there and never did. Later, he's released mid-season in a messy split. He lands in Dallas, and as a backup, he finally gets a ring. Bernie Kosar was absolutely good enough to win it all. The breaks just never went his way. Number 6, Trent Green. He was supposed to run the greatest show on turf, and then his knee gave the role to Kurt Warner. In 1999, the Rams signed Trent Green to be their guy. Big-armed, accurate, perfect for that aggressive Mike Martz offense. Then, in the preseason, disaster. Green tears up his knee. The backup, some former grocery store stocker named Kurt Warner, steps in. Warner becomes a legend, and Trent Green becomes the forgotten what-if behind one of the greatest stories in NFL history. But here's the thing. He didn't just disappear. He went to Kansas City and quietly put up huge numbers. Back-to-back 4,000-yard seasons, running another high-powered offense with Priest Holmes and Tony Gonzalez. He never got the ring, he never got the movie, but watch the tape, look at the numbers, and it's obvious. Trent Green was really, really good. One injury changed his narrative. It didn't change how well he actually played. Number 5, Mark Brunell.
Down to the 25, an inside move, leaping for the 21. Mark Brunell with a masterful run.
Lefty laser, teal jerseys, an expansion team that got good fast. Mark Brunell started out stuck behind Brett Favre in Green Bay. Then he finally got his shot in Jacksonville, and Jacksonville suddenly became a problem. With Brunell at quarterback, the Jaguars were in the playoffs, winning games they had no business winning that early in their existence. He could move. He could roll out left, fire on the run, and hit Jimmy Smith for big shots down the field. They went to AFC Championship games. They knocked off powerhouses. And for a stretch, Mark Brunell was a legit top-tier starter. But in a small market, later years as a journeyman and the rise of other star quarterbacks left him in the background of NFL memory. He made the Jags matter way earlier than they were supposed to, and most fans barely talk about it. Number 4, Drew Bledsoe. He was a 4,000-yard gunslinger before that was normal, and one hit changed NFL history. Drew Bledsoe came into the league as the number 1 overall pick and became the face of the New England Patriots. Big arm, bravely standing in the pocket, volume passing in an era that was just starting to open up. He led the Pats to a Super Bowl trip in the 90s. He was the franchise. Then, in 2001, Mo Lewis absolutely crushed him on a sideline hit. Internal bleeding. Serious, scary injury. The backup steps in. You might have heard of him. Brady takes over. The Patriots become a dynasty, and Bledsoe is suddenly the guy before the greatest of all time. The craziest part? He still had moments. He came off the bench to save the Patriots in the 2001 AFC Championship game. He had solid years in Buffalo and Dallas. Drew Bledsoe didn't lose his job because he wasn't good enough. He lost it because the greatest quarterback ever walked through the door. That's brutal timing and a wildly underrated career. Number 3, Rich Gannon. Journeyman for 10 years. MVP in his mid-30s. Rich Gannon spent most of his early career as the maybe guy. Maybe he'll start. Maybe he'll compete. Maybe he'll move on. Vikings, Redskins, Chiefs. Then he goes to Oakland, hooks up with John Gruden, and everything changes. Suddenly, he's the perfect West Coast offensive point guard. Quick decisions, accurate, deadly in rhythm. He leads the Raiders to deep playoff runs. He wins league MVP. He takes them to the Super Bowl. Then comes one of the weirdest narrative twists ever. He faces John Gruden, the coach who just left the Raiders, and Gruden knows the playbook inside and out. The Bucs defense jumps routes like they've seen him in practice for years. Pick sixes, disaster. For a lot of people, that Super Bowl became their lasting memory of Gannon. But zoom out. He went from career backup to MVP. And for a brief window, he was one of the very best quarterbacks in football. Number 2, Randall Cunningham. Before Lamar, before Vic, there was Randall Cunningham. He was doing the modern dual threat stuff in a league built for pocket passers. In Philadelphia, he was a walking highlight reel, hurdling defenders, spinning away from sacks that looked like guaranteed losses, launching moonballs downfield off one foot. They called him the ultimate weapon for a reason. But the teams around him were inconsistent. Coaching changes, offensive lines that got him hit way too much. He took a a beating. Then comes the second act, Minnesota 1998. Veteran Randall Cunningham, Randy Moss, Chris Carter, and one of the most explosive offenses the league has ever seen. They go 15-1. They look unstoppable. And then a missed kick, a stunning loss in the NFC Championship. Twice in his career, Cunningham looked like he was about to own the league. Twice. The story never quite gets the ending it deserved. He was a Lamar Jackson type guy in an era that didn't really know what to do with him. And that brings us to number one. Number one, Steve McNair. He was the heart of a franchise, an MVP, and 1 yard away from changing everything. Steve McNair's story starts at Alcorn State, where he put up video game numbers at a small school and still had people questioning whether he could play quarterback in the NFL. Maybe he should change positions. Maybe that style won't work. The Houston Oilers, then Tennessee Titans, didn't buy that. They handed him the keys. McNair was toughness personified. Big enough to shrug off linebackers, fast enough to hurt you on the ground, arm strong enough to beat you deep. There's stories of him barely practicing all week because he was so banged up, then going out on Sunday and playing like nothing was wrong. In 1999, he led the Titans on that unforgettable playoff run. And in Super Bowl 34, he engineered one of the great final drives in Super Bowl history. He escapes what looks like a guaranteed sack, fires a strike down the middle, and gets his team to the doorstep of overtime. You know the rest. The tackle at the 1 yard line, the image that still haunts Titans fans decades later. A few years later, he's co-MVP of the league. For a long stretch, if you lined up against the Titans, you knew exactly what it meant. You were going to have to beat Steve McNair, and he was going to make you earn every inch. And yet, today, he's not brought up nearly enough when we talk about the best quarterbacks of his era. Steve McNair might be the most disrespected star quarterback of his generation. So, that's our countdown. 15 quarterbacks whose careers weren't just pretty good stories. They were legitimately great peaks. Some walked into bad situations. Some were crushed by injuries. Some got overshadowed by legends. Some just had brutal timing. But if you go back and look at the numbers, the tape, the impact on their teams is pretty clear. They were way better than history gives them credit for. If you think these quarterbacks deserve more respect, drop a football in the comments to show them some love. And tell me this, who is the most underrated quarterback you've ever watched? Drop your pick below. Hit that like and subscribe button and share this with another football fan who needs a reminder of how good these guys really were.